Hi, I'm Greg Hunter, and this is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, June 8th, 2012. Fighting went on unabated in Syria again this week. The UN says that civil war is imminent. You think? After 14 months and more than 9,000 people killed, they think it's imminent? It's been imminent for months now. What this gets down to at its core is basically, a battle between the Shia minority, and that's Bashar al-Assad, and he's backed up by the Iranians and the Russians, and the Sunni majority. And they have some al-Qaeda ties, and they're backed up by Western governments. They're getting covert help at the very least. There have been calls to have, direct military intervention, and so far that hasn't happened. However, there are also repeated calls for regime change. Hillary Clinton just this week said it again, that she wants regime change. No telling how this is going to, end up, but it's going to be going on for a while, and look for it to get worse before it gets better. The European Union, the monetary union, is in deep trouble. Now Spanish banks are making all the headlines, and Greece is probably, takes the spotlight off us and goes on to Spanish banks. But listen, banks there have been downgraded. The banks are openly asking for a bailout. The monetary union is in deep trouble. People like Barack Obama and the Prime Minister of Great Britain have been, reportedly working with the European politicians to try to keep the European Union together, the monetary union, keep the euro alive at all costs. Now, Nigel Farage, the outspoken critic of the euro and member of the European Parliament, says this is a disaster. That this isn't working, it's not going to work, and it's crazy basically for them to keep doing this, and they're going to have to print massive amounts of money, unlike the world has ever seen. I'm paraphrasing Mr. Farage, but he says that this is going to be absolutely unreal if they try to keep this together, because it's going to take trillions of dollars. And maybe that's why he says expect big inflation and buy gold. Next up, you have the Fed chief Ben Bernanke, who was on Capitol Hill this week. He was talking about what else? Stimulus. We had this terrible employment report, and just recently, where we only created 60 or 70,000 jobs. And also the European Union is in deep trouble. And what he wasn't asked about was these swap lines that the Fed opened up, months ago. And according to one former Fed governor who recently said on Larry Kudlow's show on CNBC that, the swap lines are already open. They don't have to do anything. And, they can create as much digital money and hand it over to the European Central Bank as they want. And he expects the ECB to do a lot of asking. His words, a lot of asking. So the bailout, I think, is probably already started. And, Ben Bernanke is going to meet with the Federal Reserve in a big meeting, the big Fed meeting coming up in around 2 weeks. And I'm sure they're going to be talking about that. And we shall see what they do. But when he says he has tools in his toolbox, basically the tools are, printing digital money, and lots of it. So that's where that is. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker survived a recall attempt, and basically an attempt to kick him out of office. The reason why the unions got upset that Walker wanted to cut pay and benefits of certain public workers unions, and he did that. And not all of them, but he did basically cut their benefits and cut their pay and make them contribute more for health care and their retirement, things like that, because many states are, basically fighting budget battles. It's, a big problem with, something like 45 states have some sort of budget trouble, some sort of shortfall. Some are huge shortfalls in the tens of billions of dollars. California comes to mind, Florida, Illinois, big trouble because they have big deficits. The big story on Capitol Hill this week was Eric Holder testifying in front of Congress about the ATF sting called Fast and Furious, where they basically gave semi-automatic weapons to Mexican drug cartels. What could go wrong? It really is no joke because a Border Patrol agent was killed. And of course, Congress wants to know from Eric Holder, who's in charge of the ATF. He's the de facto head because he's the Attorney General. They wanted to know what he knew and when he knew it. And there's also reports that he's holding back documents about, from the Justice Department about what he knew. And that's a story. And that's a big mess because we had a law enforcement agent get killed with some bungled sting operation with an assault rifle, and many of them are still out there. But, if Congress really wants to take the high road with Eric Holder, why don't they ask him, oh, and by the way, why haven't you prosecuted a single financial elite for the trillions of dollars in fraud and fraudulent activities by the big bankers? I mean, there were liar loans, there was security fraud, there was this robo signing, which was totally, mischaracterized by the mainstream media. It was really forgery and perjury and fraud on the court. That's what that robo signing was about. Yeah, why hasn't a single financial elite been prosecuted? I mean, MF Global. Where's the investigation there? 1.6 billion in customer money. Why aren't they asking about that? Well, of course, basically Congress has been bought off. I mean, Congress has gotten campaign donations from Wall Street, both Democrats and Republicans. So we're not going to hear about any of that. But, just to give you some comparison, the president says that, well, they did the least ethical thing. They really didn't do anything wrong. Really? They didn't do anything wrong? In the savings and loan crisis, which was, according to William Black, professor of economics and law and former bank regulator of that era, says that the financial crisis is the same thing of 2008, the same thing as the savings and loan crisis, much the same thing, but only 70 times bigger. And of course, trillions of dollars in lost asset values and Fed purchases of toxic assets that was supposed to be just like a treasury, and they were toxic. And so, if Congress wants to take the high road, they could be asking Eric Holder about that, or the next attorney general, who may be a Republican. But of course, they're bought off. I mean, they get campaign donations from Wall Street. So what we have are bagmen and not statesmen, except for a few. Finally, the story that basically got way more attention than it deserved and took away attention from serious news is the wait for it, Mayor Bloomberg's crackdown on sugary drinks in New York City. That he wants to cut the size of sugary drinks. No more big, giant 24-ounce Slurpees. Wow. Is that a story? Well, I guess a kicker story, a small story, but it's not, this huge story that, the mainstream media made it out to be. And of course, I think that story got way more coverage than all the stories I just told you about. That's the way I see it. Thank you for supporting USAWatchdog.com.